The sun over the Sinai does not merely shine, it judges. It is a blinding white gold that dissolves the horizon into a shimmering haze where the earth and the heavens seem to bleed into one another. Here, amidst the jagged silhouettes of the wilderness, the air is thick with the scent of dust and the ancient memory of fire. You can feel the weight of the moment in the very marrow of your bones. Prophet Musa stands at the center of this stillness. In his hands, the stone tablets feel heavier than the mountains from which they were hewn. Every etched command is a gravity he carries for a nation. The rhythmic, guttural snap of a flickering torch inside his tent provides the only heartbeat to the afternoon, a steady, persistent sound that underscores the immense responsibility of a man who has looked into the burning bush. He is the speaker of Allah. He is the one who parted the abyss. Around him, the children of Israel look up, seeking the clarity that only a messenger can provide. It is in this atmosphere of absolute peak, the height of his leadership and the zenith of his prophetic mission, that a single question is cast into the air like a stone into a still pool. A man steps forward, his voice small against the vastness of the desert, asking if there is anyone on this earth more knowledgeable than the one who stands before them. Musa pauses. He reflects on the wahi, the laws, the direct communion he has shared upon the mount. His answer is not born of a seeker's pride, but of a leader's honesty. He says simply that there is no one. In that moment, the heat haze seems to freeze. The rhythmic snapping of the torch falls silent. A sudden, crushing weight of stillness descends, a silence so heavy it feels like a physical presence. It is the humbling quiet that precedes a divine correction. The horizon shifts. The blinding gold of the Sinai sun begins to soften, giving way to the realization that the law is but a single shore on an infinite ocean. A voice, not heard with the ears but felt in the soul, recalibrates the prophet's reality. He is told of a servant, a man hidden from the eyes of the world, dwelling where the two seas meet. This servant possesses a knowledge that Musa does not, a hidden wisdom that operates beneath the surface of the seen world. The peak of certainty, which Musa thought he had reached, is suddenly revealed to be but the foot of a much greater mountain. The journey is not over. It has only shifted from the dry stones of the law to the deep, mysterious blues of the unseen. To find this teacher, Musa must become the student once more. He must carry a fish in a basket, and where the dead comes to life, the journey into the depths of Al-Khidr will truly begin. Intellectual humility is the gate, and Musa is now standing before it, ready to trade the comfort of knowing for the terrifying beauty of seeing.
The journey is an endurance of the spirit, a slow and agonizing erosion of the self against the backdrop of a world that feels far too vast for human feet. Musa and his young companion Yusha move across a landscape where the earth itself feels like an altar, burning under a sky that offers no shadow and no respite. Their skin is etched with a biting crust of salt and the fine white dust of the road, a map of physical exhaustion that transcends the limits of the body. They carry with them a sign so mundane it almost defies the grandeur of their quest, a salted fish, dried and lifeless, resting in a simple basket. It is the weight of the ordinary being carried toward the extraordinary. As they finally reach the junction, the place where two vast, churning oceans collide in a violent, beautiful embrace, the very texture of the air undergoes a transformation. The harsh, biting heat of the desert is suddenly swallowed by a heavy, misted coolness. The spray of the salt water hits their parched, sun-beaten skin with a sharp, stinging vitality, a reminder that they have reached the jagged edge of the known world. Here, where the currents of the earth meet in a swirling vortex of deep sapphire and emerald, the impossible finds its breath. Inside the basket, the long-held stillness breaks. The dried, brittle scales of the salted fish begin to catch a light that does not originate from the sun. It begins as a faint rhythmic tremor, a pulse returning to where there should be nothing but the silence of the dead. Then a shimmer. The silver of its skin returns in an instant, glowing with an ethereal luminescence that defies every law of the physical world. With a sudden, fluid grace, the fish leaps from the basket. It does not merely fall into the waves, it carves a path through the water, leaving behind a wake of liquid light, a path of shimmer that remains suspended and open amidst the crashing foam, a silver thread sewn into the fabric of the deep. Musa watches, the crushing weariness of the road momentarily forgotten in the face of this divine choreography. The sign has been given. In the place where the dead find life, the prophet finds his direction. It is the profound realization that the most barren, dead parts of our own existence, our failures, our exhaustion, our perceived endings, are the very conduits through which the unseen chooses to flow. The junction of the two seas is not just a location on a map, it is the moment where human persistence finally intersects with the infinite mercy of the Creator. The path is open, and the water now holds the secret of the way forward.
The wind here does not merely blow, it screams, a haunting, hollow roar that echoes through the sun-bleached sea caves, carrying the spray of 1,000 forgotten storms. Against the jagged, sterile gray of the cliffside, there is a sudden, impossible shock of color. It is a deep, verdant green, the shade of a forest floor in a land where rain never ends, blending so seamlessly into the moss and the spray that the figure seems to be an extension of the earth itself. He sits at the very edge of the world, a silhouette of quietude amidst the chaotic crashing of the tides. This is Al-Khidr, the Green One. His presence radiates a stillness that feels older than the mountains, a silence that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of a profound, unsettling peace. When Musa approaches, the weight of his prophethood, his leadership, and his vast knowledge of the law feels like a heavy cloak under the piercing, calm gaze of this stranger. Al-Khidr's eyes do not look at the surface of things. They seem to look through the skin of time itself, seeing the invisible threads that bind the beginning to the end. Musa, the speaker of Allah, offers the request of a humble seeker. May I follow you so that you may teach me something of the right guidance you have been taught. The response is not a welcome, but a warning that resonates with the weight of cosmic truth. You will not be able to have patience with me, Al-Khidr speaks, his voice steady as the deep tide. He understands the agony of the intellect when faced with the inexplicable. He knows that Musa's mind is a fortress of justice and order, while the path ahead is governed by a logic that exists outside the borders of human reason. How can you have patience, he asks, with that which you cannot encompass in your knowledge? It is a challenge to the very core of the ego, the need to categorize, to judge, and to understand before one can believe. A pact is struck in the shadow of the cliffs, sealed by the howling wind. Musa must remain silent. He must witness without questioning, moving through the world like a ghost, leaving his knowing behind, so that he might finally begin seeing. The first gate of the unseen has opened, and as they turn toward the sea, the psychological tension of the law meeting the truth begins to tighten like a coiled spring. The journey has begun, and the only price of admission is the absolute surrender of the self. The wooden deck of the small fishing vessel groans under the rhythmic pulse of the waves, a humble sanctuary of salt-stained timber and worn nets. These are men of the sea.
their faces etched with the deep lines of 1,000 sunsets and the quiet dignity of the poor. They have offered passage not for gold, but out of the sheer, unvarnished kindness of their hearts. The air is heavy with the scent of drying brine and the low, rhythmic hum of the ocean against the hull. It is in this atmosphere of gratitude that the unthinkable begins. Al-Khidr moves with a terrifying, singular focus. There is no anger in his eyes, only a cold, celestial deliberation that freezes the blood. Then the silence is shattered. The sharp, violent splintering of wood erupts from the lower hull, a jagged, agonizing sound of destruction that echoes across the open water. A hole is torn into the very heart of the ship, the seasoned wood weeping as it yields to the force of the blow. Immediately, the icy rush of dark seawater begins to hiss into the hold, a predatory, swirling sound that signals an ending. The panicked whispers of the sailors rise like a thin mist, confused, desperate prayers uttered into the wind as they scramble to understand why their sanctuary is failing them. Musa watches, and the fire of Sinai burns within his chest. His heart, attuned to the frequency of absolute justice, cannot reconcile this apparent act of cruelty with the man of God standing before him. To harm the innocent, to scuttle the livelihood of the needy, it is a transgression against every law he has ever inscribed in stone. The vow of silence, once so firm, fractures alongside the timber. He demands to know if this was done to drown the people, his voice a thunder of moral outrage. He sees only the sinking ship, the ruined wood, and the impending tragedy. He cannot see the invisible fleet of a tyrant king on the horizon, a fleet that seizes every perfect vessel in its path. He sees the setback, the loss, and the wound, unaware that in the economy of the unseen, a broken boat is the only one that stays with its owner. The paradox of the sinking vessel is the first lesson in the architecture of mercy, that sometimes the divine must break a thing to save it from being stolen.
The scent of salt and the roar of the ocean eventually fade, replaced by the heavy, sweet perfume of blossoming pomegranate and the damp, cool earth of an inland garden. It is a place of profound, almost surreal peace, where the only sound is the soft, rhythmic rustle of leaves and the distant, melodic call of a bird. The stillness here is not empty. It is a deafening, golden quiet that seems to cradle the very essence of life itself. In the center of this sanctuary, a young boy plays in the dappled sunlight, his laughter like a gentle ripple on a clear pond, a sound of pure, untouched innocence. But as Musa watches, the air begins to grow heavy with an unspoken dread. Al-Khidr moves. He does not move with the hesitation or the malice of a man, but with the terrifying, crystalline certainty of an instrument of fate. In a single heart-shattering moment, the laughter is extinguished. The child is gone. The silence that rushes back into the garden is no longer peaceful. It is a crushing, suffocating weight that pulls at the very foundations of the earth. Musa stands paralyzed, the vibrant greens and golds of the garden now a mocking contrast to the tragedy before him. Within his chest, the moral compass that has guided him through Pharaoh's court and across the wilderness begins to roar. It is a deafening internal scream, the sound of the law colliding with the incomprehensible. The grief he feels is not just for the child, but for the apparent collapse of justice itself. He is a prophet of the seen world, a champion of the oppressed, and his soul recoils from this act as if from a physical flame. The pact of silence is no longer a promise, it is a cage he must break. His voice, thick with a grief that transcends time, shatters the stillness. He demands an explanation for this monstrous thing, his words a thunderous protest against the vacuum of reason. He sees only the blood on the grass and the stolen future of a child. He cannot see the shadow of the man that child would have become, nor the spiritual ruin he would have brought upon his grieving, faithful parents. He sees the wound, but not the surgery. The weight of the absolute is now a mountain between them, and as the journey teeters on the edge of finality, the prophet learns the most painful lesson of the student, that the divine plan often protects the eternal soul by breaking the human heart.
The air in this place is different. It is thin, choked with a dry, biting dust that clings to the skin like a shroud, tasting of ancient, parched earth. This is a town of closed doors and hardened hearts, a settlement where the sacred spirit of hospitality has been allowed to wither into a cold, transactional silence. Musa and his companion walk through the narrow, suffocating streets, the physical ache of hunger a persistent, hollow thrumming in their midsections. They are travelers, weary and destitute, yet every threshold they approach is met with the sharp, final sound of a bolt being drawn or a face turned away in practiced disdain. The cruelty here is not a sudden storm, but a slow, grinding indifference that leaves one feeling invisible. It is an environment designed to break the spirit. And yet, amidst this theater of unkindness, Al-Khidr stops. He does not stop to rest, nor to plead for the mercy of these people, but to work. He stands before a wall that is nothing more than a jagged spine of leaning stone, a crumbling ruin ready to surrender to the gravity of the desert. Without a word, without a request for payment, and without so much as a glance toward the hostile hosts who mocked them, he begins the grueling labor of restoration. The sound is heavy and rhythmic, the scraping of limestone, the dull, bone-deep thud of massive weight meeting weight, and the labored, rhythmic breath of a man giving his final strength to those who gave him nothing. Musa watches, and the biting irony of the scene tastes more bitter than the dust in his mouth. To his mind, the law is a mirror of justice. Those who deny the stranger do not deserve the stranger's sweat. The frustration within him reaches a crescendo, a peak of righteous confusion that threatens to tear the very fabric of their pact. He sees the absurdity of the act, a prophet and a sage, starving and scorned, rebuilding the fortress of their oppressors. He cannot see the hidden treasure buried beneath that soil, protected by this very wall for two orphans whose father was a righteous man. He cannot see that divine mercy is not always a reward for the worthy, but often a shield for the innocent, carried silently on the backs of the unrecognized. This is the wall of silence, where the ego's demand for recognition must finally die so that true sincerity can be born. The final stone is set into place, the dust settles, and for Musa, the boundary of human patience has finally been crossed.
The horizon is no longer a line, but a bleeding wound of gold and violet. As the sun begins its slow descent, the long shadows of the Sinai stretch out like the fingers of a giant, reaching for a world that is fundamentally different than it was 3 days ago. The air has grown still, cooling rapidly as the golden hour light bathes the rugged coastline in a deceptive amber warmth. Al-Khidr stands at the precipice of their parting, his figure backlit by the dying sun until he is little more than a shimmering silhouette against the encroaching mist. "This," he whispers, the words carrying more weight than the stones of the wall, "is the parting between me and you." The silence that follows is not one of tension, but of a profound, cosmic unveiling. One by one, the veils of the material world are pulled back. The splintering boat was not an act of malice, but a shield. A tyrant king's fleet was sweeping the coast, seizing every perfect vessel, and so a small wound saved a family's entire world. The tragedy in the garden was not a loss, but a preservation. The soul of a child was taken before it could grow to crush the hearts and faith of his righteous parents with a darkness they did not deserve. And the wall that Musa rebuilt while hungry and scorned, was a guardian of gold, held in place by the prayers of a father long dead, ensuring the 2 orphans would find their inheritance when they were strong enough to hold it. As the explanation unfolds, the internal roar of Musa's moral compass finally subsides, replaced by a profound, terrifying expansion in his chest. It is the feeling of a heart breaking open to admit the infinite. The sharp, jagged edges of the injustices he witnessed begin to soften, merging into a singular, breathtaking tapestry of divine mercy. He realizes that he has been judging the brushstrokes while standing inches from the canvas, never seeing the masterpiece that required every dark line to make the light meaningful. The ocean nearby begins to surge, its vast, peaceful roar filling the space where human questions once lived. It is the sound of Al-Khidr, a tide that moves with a purpose the shore can never comprehend. Al-Khidr begins to fade into the sea mist, a ghost of the unseen returning to the depths from which he came. Musa stands alone on the shore, the weight of the stone tablet still in his hands, but his spirit is now light. He has learned that peace is not the reward for understanding the mystery. Peace is the surrender to the one who holds the mystery. The prophet who once spoke to God now learns to listen to the silence of God's plan, watching as the last of the light vanishes, leaving behind a world that is dark to the eyes, but brilliantly clear to the soul.